Okay, so let's do the exercise 7, and that exercise is about reading 3 strings or numbers from the user and print them in reverse order. So I just would like to give you different ways how to solve this, because of the data type. When we use a number, reading 3 numbers from the user and then displaying them in a different order is kind of easy, right? I said right, but nobody said yes, so I hope you just agree with me, but if you don't, we're going to find out. First of all, if I need to read all the time without thinking, I need to use a scanner. So scanner, if you use control space and you don't just type the scanner and then you select it and you click, the import is going to be coming automatically for you. But just don't forget to understand that this is something that has to be written like this: import java.util.scanner. Because in the quiz next week, I'm going to maybe give you some piece of code and tell you what's wrong with it. And if, for example, I do something like this and tell you this code is like this, of course I'm not going to show you the red line in the code. And you have to tell me there's a problem, and the problem is this line here, because this is the problem, and so on. So that's the type of exercises, of one of the type of questions you're going to be having to face in the quiz next week, inshallah. The other one is that I'm going to show you a piece of code and tell you what's the output, what's the result, what should I see on the screen if I run this code. So you have to be able to understand each line and make sure that it's okay, there's no problem, etc. And I might tell you, okay, there's a problem now, but this is something else anyways, when I'm going to be talking about the quiz later on. So now we have the scanner. Let's just create and declare the name of the variable and use scanner system.in. Now I need to read 3 numbers. I will start with a number without a string. Start with a number and then print them in the reverse order. And then let's see how we can do that. So the numbers, let's make them simple: n1, n2, n3. And I'd like to ask the user, please enter 3 numbers. And I'm going to put that without line, so it will be on the same line of this text. And then int, no, I just had declared them before, n1 equal kb.nextInt, and then copy and paste, because n2 is the same, n3 is the same. Now I'm reading 3 numbers from the user, and I'm putting the first number in the n1, second in n2, third in n3. Now if I'd like to display them in a reverse order, what should I do? First of all, did you notice something? I'm not typing system.out.println. Did you notice that I just did this and then it showed me everything? This is a shortcut. If you type S out and then you press the tab on your keyboard, it's going to complete. But if you do it the first time, it has to be continuous. If you just press this and then tab, NetBeans is going to complete it for you. But if you just do this and then tab again, no, it's not going to work. If you do Control Z, or if you type S out and then you just come back and then you type, it's not going to work. It has to be continuous. And then now I'd like to display the 3 numbers in the reverse orders. So the numbers in reverse order are, now what should I do to display them in reverse order? So I just need to display n3 first, then n2, then n1, which is kind of easy. I can do something like this: n1, n3. I said 3, n2, n1. And this is going to print them in the reverse order. Kind of easy. But maybe that was not what you were expecting. Let's just see. If I put like 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Now, if I don't want them to be all in one, I want them to be all in one line, I can just do this, for example. So display N3 and then a space, then N2 and then a space and then N1. Now these are going to be now on the same line. If I want them to be all here, well, just you take everything from here and then you put plus. So I display this text, then N3, then a space, then N2, then a space, then N1. If I don't put the spaces, is it going to work? Or am I going to see this being summed up? Am I going to see 1 plus 2 plus 3 like 6? 1, 2, 3. It's going to show me 3, 2, 1, but then they all, as you said, 321. So the spaces then are just going to be allowing me to see them spaced out. Fine, right? Now if I read them all in one, each one in a different variable, that will be fine. Now the problem is, what if I'd like to read a string now? To read the text. Now next int is not going to work because I cannot put the text into a string. I can use next line. Or I can use next. What's the difference again? Next reads only one word, we say. Next line read everything. So if I do this, means next, 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 it means this. If I type 1, 2, 3, it's just going to take 1 and put it in N1, take 2 and put it in N2, and take 3 and put it in N3, because when I say next, it looks for the space. If there's a space, it means, okay, this is where the first one stops. If there's another space, this is where the second one stops, and that's it. So now if I do something like this is going to work again same way. But what if I use now next line? Now next line is going to read everything in one place. So for example, now I don't need to have 3 of them. I can just use 1 of them. Now let me call this, this is the N1. Let's call it N1. Now if I do this, if I type 1, 2, 3, now this 1, 2, 3, the whole thing is going to be stored into the N1. That's what the next line does. It reads everything, the whole line. Now if I have N1 like this, and I would like to display them in a reverse order, it's going to be a little bit not the same idea. Now if I'd like to split them, what should I do? I need to find the position of this one, and then I can use A, exactly, looking for the index of. Now how to find the position of that one? I need to use the index of what? Index of the space. But it's going to be a little bit more than just that. But let's do this incrementally. Now if I'd like to do this, I need to make it into small parts. I need to have part 1, part 2, and then part 3. Now I'm not going to read 3 numbers. I'm going to say 3 texts, and the texts in reverse order. And I'm just going to do something like this. Now I'm just going to rename this to make it more, this is my text, and I'm going to split the text in different parts because I would like to display these parts into different places. Now what I did is just rename. I renamed the string to be, this is going to be the text, and I'm going to ask please enter a text of 3 parts, and then of 3 words, let's say, and then the text in reverse order is going to be displayed here. Now for now what I'm doing, I'm just doing this, whatever I type, this is going to be, this is my first word, this is my second, this is my third. But I'd like this to be flipped around and in a reverse order. But at the end, I don't want to display this. So what I'd like to do is to display the part 3, like part 3 here, plus a space, then part 2, plus a space, plus part 1. That's what I'd like to do to be able to flip them around. But with text and reading the whole thing, I can just read 3 texts at the same time, and this is going to be helpful. But what if I read the whole thing in one go, in one using next line? If I use next, 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 it will be easier. But if I use next line, I have to do more. And I'd like to show you what needs to be done. Now, imagine, just to make things simple, okay, cancel, because it has some parts. I have a problem here. Why do I have these red lines here? Do you know why? Let me put my mouse over this. It says variable part 3 might not have been initialized. Might not have been initialized. What does this mean? It means that I declared this variable, I did not put anything inside of it, and I told the computer, look what's inside of this part 3, and display it on the screen. I did not put anything in it, so it will not work. So that's why it's complaining like this. Now what I can do is to initialize them by putting something that is nothing, this is empty. Now empty means not this, I just put this, that means it's empty. That means it's just a text that contains nothing. If I put this, that means it contains a space. Now if I do this now, these parts are empty. So if I put any word, these are going to be considered as words. Nothing is going to happen. Now what I'd like to do now is to be able, let me just put this to be visible. I'd like to be able to run this and show you what I need to do. Now if my text is like this, the text is going to be this thing. I need to find the space and then get the first part before the space at this time and put it in part 1, and take this before the space and put it in part 2, and then take the last one and put it in part 3. So this way I'm going to be splitting the text into different parts. Now how can I split the text? I'll show you. If I know exactly the numbers, the position of the space, like for example for this case, part 1 is going to be equal to what? Text dot, you remember substring? Substrings, there are two versions of it. One that has 2 numbers, the other one that has 1 number. One that has 2 numbers, you tell it from where it starts and where should it end. So I'm going to start from 0, that this is my text. From 0, and this is 0, 1, 2. So I'd like to start, okay, this is not what I wanted. I want to stop here. Now by doing this, if I, okay, stop. Let me run again. So 1, 2, and 3. Now you see this is, I have some space and then 11, which is this part 1 now, because it just gave me this. If I'd like to get the part 2, part 2 is what? This is 0, 1, 2. I should start from 3. And where should I stop? This is 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to say to put 5. And if I do something like this, again 1, 2, 3. Now able to see the part 1 and part 2, and the part 3 is still empty because I did not put anything inside of it. Now if I'd like to see part 3, I can just say this is 5, 6. That means from 6 until the end, you put it in part 3. From 6 until the end, that's going to be part 3. And doing so, I'm able to split that text into different parts. Is this okay with you? I'm seeing some eyes rolling down. Is it okay? Substring, you just need to understand what they do. It just gives you a part of the text. Now, the only thing that substring might be confusing, and I mentioned that earlier, is that the number here, the second number, which means that if I choose from 0, for example, to 2, the 2 is not included. So it starts from 0 and it stops before 2. This is position 0, this is position 1, and this is position 2. So 2 is not included. When I say 0, 2, give me from 0 until before 2. That means here. And if I say 3, 5, that means this is 0, 1, 2, this is 3, 3, 4, and before 5. So that means just this. This is how substring work. Now what I'd like to do is that, anyway, this is going to work with only when my numbers are, if my input has only 2 numbers. But what if I do something like this? This is not going to work. This needs to be changed. So instead of 2, it should be now 0, 1, 2, 3. And instead of 5, I'm not going to start from 3 here. I need to start from 4. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then from this should be from 8. And this way it will work. But if I just keep it without changing, this is going to be confusing because it's going to be completely messed up. But if I change the values now, this is going to work with 3, with the number, with the words that have 3 letters. There's a way actually to make this work all the time. Is that by replacing here, you see this is the position of the space. I can do something. Position of the first space. I'll give it a very long name. How to know the position of the first space is that you ask the index of, and then I put a space. And then this position of the first space, if I put it here, this is going to work all the time. The part 1 is going to work all the time now, because I'm just looking for the position of the first space and then put it here. Now the position of the second space is a little bit tricky, but I can also get it by using something else. So this is the last space. I'm going to name it like this, position of last space, and I'm not going to use index of. There's another one which is last index of. Index of start looking from, if I have a text, it starts looking from here and see that when it finds the space it will stop. Last index of, which will start from the back, and once it finds the position it will stop. Now once I have the last position of the space, I put it here. But the problem is this 4 here. What I need to do is that normally this position of the space is here. The here is going to be the one after the space. So it's going to be like this plus 1. This is going to be, I'm going to start from the position of the first space plus 1 until the last space. And then the same thing for the last one, from the position of the last space plus 1. And this is going to give me, regardless of what's the size, or let me just maybe make it more simple to follow. It's going to work all the time. If I just have, it's just going to look for spaces and then their position, then put them there. So every time, what I used to do, if you remember, when when it was with the 1 and 2 and 3, what I used to do is something like this without the positions. It was, let me just cancel this, and it was something like this. I found the position of the first one. This is, I always start from the first one, and then the position of the first one, I counted it, and then after one for the next one, it's going to be this position plus 1. Same thing for the last one. This position plus 1 is where I start. So that's exactly what I did. Oh, I just typed something and then I lost my control space. But there's something that I can do. Just to find it. This is the one. Yes. Here it is. In the history, there's something that is saved, so I can have. So what I needed to do is just find the position of the first space with index of, and find the position of the last space with last index of, and then just put the correct positions and find it. Nice, right? It's a little bit confusing because it's a lot of different things that we've seen together.